fiddles in string music, guitars, banjos, fiddles, so forth. They do what's called cross-tuning. And so the two different fiddles are tuned differently. And you don't like to be sitting there retuning a fiddle when you're performing, because when you're retuning a fiddle during a performance, it makes you look like a banjo player. And you don't want to do that, right? That's, you don't want to do that. So there's about 20 different tunings. Cross-tuning, what was it called in Italian?
Scordatura.
Scordatura, and that was invented, fairly recently, back about the 1600s. And so there's about 20 different tunings that we find a lot of old-time music in. And we have the two fiddles here because they're tuned differently for that reason. Also, you notice on this fiddle I was playing a lot of double stops. That means two strings at the same time. And what that does is that it increases volume. And think about it, you didn't have microphones, you didn't have amplifiers or speakers, and you're in a rowdy dance hall. So you have to project. So double stops work quite well. We love ragtime. Shall we do a ragtime tune? Most of the ragtime tunes have some kind of a funny title to them. It's called Dill Pickle Rag, this one. I think that's kind of a fun tune. Just come up with some crazy name. One of the other favorite tunes we do is Pig Ankle Rag. When was the last time you thought of a pig, let alone a pig's ankle, Pig Ankle Rag. So yeah, we like to get around. We did a contest in Idaho here last year, and we've done contests in Tennessee. So in retirement, this music has taken us to a lot of different places, West Virginia, and we really enjoyed it. And I really don't mind all that driving, because Frances does all of the driving. Can you imagine that? She does all of the driving. The only thing I have to do is hang onto the steering wheel. Yeah, we drive all over the place. We first met roughly, come this December, it'll be 50 years ago that we met. 50 years ago we met. She was 3 and I was 6.
I like him.
Okay. And she hasn't left me behind at a truck stop yet. So we think that's pretty good. Bill?
Okay.
Here's one that was recorded by Bob Wills. Now, where is Bob Wills from? Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. You've all heard of Bob Wills. Texas Swing, Bob Wills in Texas, right? New Mexico. His first wife and he lived in Roy, New Mexico. He was known as the Singing Barber. So, when we're ever in Texas, we always tell them that, Bob Wills comes from New Mexico. So this is one that he recorded, and it's kind of a fun, 1947, 1945, somewhere in there, he first recorded it. Milk Cow Blues. This is our version. and they'll have Bob Wills and one of his original Playboy's buses, you know, back from the 1930s, on display. And they're building it in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they'll include a lot of different artists from the state of Oklahoma. And so if you ever get there, it'd be wonderful. Downtown Tulsa, they have the Woody Guthrie Museum there. They're talking about putting together a Bob Dylan museum there. And they had all these other, who was it? Roy Clark just passed away not too long ago. They're going to have his stuff there as well. And it's right across the street from Kane Dance Hall, which is a famous dance hall dedicated to Bob Wills. So a lot happening right there in the Tulsa area, if you're interested. Shall we end up with one?
Okay.
So wait, we've been to Texas, we've been to Mississippi, we've been to Tennessee. Let's go to a little place called New Mexico. Okay? And back in the day, back in the 10s, the teens, and the 20s, you had a lot of folks in automobiles and pickup trucks going out into the hinterlands and recording old musicians, people that were playing, old-timers playing guitar, old-timers playing the fiddle. And the whole idea was to capture the music before these folks passed on. And the most famous person to do it in the state of New Mexico is a man by the name of Rob, R-O-B-B, out of the University of New Mexico. And you can get online to University of Mexico and find all of his recordings right there. And they're also duplicated in the Smithsonian. And we've known other people, and these folks are called field recorders. They go out and they record the music that they pick up. That other fellow that we met that did it for Indiana, Illinois, and another young man that we know that did it for the state of West Virginia. So all this stuff is now logged on if you want to hear some of the old tunes. Now some of it is pretty tough to listen to if you're a musician, if you have a good ear, because you're talking about old instruments, you're talking about instruments that maybe, I mean, back in the day they would take a screen door apart to get strings for a fiddle. I mean, you know, because you did whatever you could do to get your music, right? And so maybe the memories weren't as good, and maybe the coordination wasn't as good. So some of the music is a little tough to listen to, but it's all real and it's all from the heart. These two songs were recorded in northern New Mexico, and the one is called El Lirio, which means the lily, and then the other one is called Los Gaviotas, Las Gaviotas, and that means the seagulls. And what you would do, we've been playing you little snippets of tunes, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. But if we were in a dance, we'd be sitting down for one thing, because a band dance is going to last for 4 or 5 hours. And then the other thing is that if there's a caller, like a square dance caller, 8, 9, 10 minutes on some of these songs. And so what they would do, instead of just playing the same song over and over and over again, like that first song that we played, they'll combine songs. And so this is 2 polkas that were put together from northern New Mexico, and they're actually in 2 different keys, which is kind of interesting too, because usually when they put 2 songs together for a dance, they kept it in the same key. So these were done in 2 different keys. So we'll play each one of them twice for you, as you might have heard it years and years ago at a dance hall someplace. El Lirio y Las Gaviotas. Oh, does anybody know what grito is? Grito? That's a grito, okay? And it's primarily done by the men, so I expect to hear some gritos. Ready?
Ready?
1, 2, 3. Thanks, folks. I think we probably chewed up our time. If you'd like more, we always have more, but, you know, that's fine. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is the concert violin tuned differently than your fiddles?
The difference between a violin and a fiddle. A violin has strings. A fiddle has strings.
Strings.
That's loose for catgut.
Actually, we don't do catgut anymore.
No, I
It's
know.
too difficult to use. You know, the Italian string, the Italian tuning is your traditional concert tuning. That's your G, D, A, and E. And that's how this one is tuned. So that's your standard tuning. In old time music, we call it Italian tuning, E-Y-E, Italian tuning. Right? And then this one over here is tuned a little differently, A-E-A-E. So this one and this one are the same, just an octave apart. And this one are the same, just an octave apart.
When you play double string,
Right.
are you using the two same strings playing the same note?
No, not always. See, like on that last one, that Gabbios. So what I just did then is I fingered the D string, but I just played the G string open, which makes it what we call the drone. Now when you think of a drone, think of a, what do you call it? A bagpipe, thank you, yeah. But then, in order
Good job, Bill.
in order to get the key proper, you have to do, sometimes you have to finger bow string. Now see, I'm putting fingers on both the D string and the A string. And then I let go. Now I have to go and put a finger on the G string. See, to get that proper chord. I'm actually playing chords that way. But you're playing two adjacent strings. And some of the old timers, this bridge, as we call it, by the way, you can only play part of a tune on a fiddle because it's abridged. The young man got it. So anyhow, I'm a little high strung today. Anyhow, some of the old timers would flatten out the bridge. They would take the arc. It has a certain arc on the bridge. It's not symmetrical. This side is down a little bit lower than this side is, and they would flatten it so they would actually play or bow three strings at the same time, and then they would play three strings. And the guy that came up with all this, you learned about in high school, right? Pythagoras came up with all that. Right? We're tuned in fifths. The guitar is tuned in thirds and fourths. So that's something that Pythagoras came up and first defined for us, was the sequence. Any other questions? Good questions. Well, we love doing this.
Where's your next tour stop?
Our next tour.
Adonis.
At the bank.
Yeah, at the bank. Right. There's a nice area right in the front of the bank there with a couch and